let's see, where do I want to really start talking about the color theory here? That one's a good one. These very graphic images are an excellent way to show you examples of color contrast. Look at, there is no contrast between that to that. Now our eye automatically puts in a contrast, and there is a slight differentiation, slight difference in color right in there, but it's very, very subtle. Why does that work? It works because our eye automatically fills in that horizon line. This is the purplest, the grayest, the coolest tone. This blue is a warmer tone than that purple. That allows that purple to sit in the back. This color is actually, if you isolate that color, it's a bluer tone. This is the warmer tones. So anything that you want to come forward has to be a warmer tone. Warm being yellowed, cool being blued. So here, this is a very prime example. Our eye is kind of led to here. After we see this, the highest contrast, the color brings it forward. The very faintness here is what pushes that back and creates atmosphere. Always, always, always looking to create some sort of atmosphere. Here again, the most intense colors. Now, this one is actually, squint at it. Squint your eyes when you're looking at this. And nothing truly comes forward over, as far as the color goes. What actually comes forward the most is your negative space. And what do they have as the negative space? They have the continent of Australia, which is what they actually want you to see the most. It's kind of interesting when you squint at it, because all of these other colors are all pretty much so the same tones. This is a much warmer tone than this cool blue. So it does come forward still, and you have this contrast of this white line, so that will bring it forward in front of the blue. But now also here, we're using perspective to push this off into the distance. So we're creating atmosphere and distance by use of perspective. It's a great thing. Here, we can look at this one and see how we have the highest contrast of the most intense colors. That's what brings this forward, right? So again, you squint at it, and this color tone here kind of all matches. So this conflicts a little bit with this. This, however, is a more solid purple tone back here. My chair just went down again. Oh, Jesus. So our eyes are actually being drawn into this image. This eagle, or bird, whatever it is, Fontainebleau, this warm spot. Look at this warm spot right here in the middle of that. Squint at it. If you squint at that spot right there, in here, that's where the artist wanted you to mainly focus. So you have this higher contrast. It's pulling you into the image, right? Kind of cool. So, again, we're using perspective to bring this forward. This is the most intense color. Colors fade as you go back, and they get lighter, which I guess is fading, but the tone itself gets lighter. I do want to talk about how they do the mountains here also. Okay, so here, same thing. Highest contrast of colors are in the front. Now, it wants to lead you to right here to where this train is. So the artist chose to keep the front, dark so that your eye is led more into the image itself. It's pulling you into that image. By doing that and having this train pointing this direction, you know, there's an arrow right there, and the arrow is showing you that mountain, and it's just, you're very much so led into this painting, which is excellent, right? Here, the reason why this comes in front of this is because this is warmer colors. You have higher contrast, but here you have this jaggedy edge and high contrast. So you are seeing this also, because this is an important feature in this poster. They do want you to feel like you're going back in, so they're using a forced perspective, and then it's leading you right up into the image. You guys see that? Leading you right up to the top of the mountain. Okay, now I'm really shrunk down here. This is kind of hilarious. I feel like I'm a little kid at the table. All right, this red is more intense of a red than this. Now, this is really interesting. Here's the map is down here, all right, and it's very gray. So this orange lettering coming over the gray is really going to be noticeable. But what this has also done, look at that forced perspective of that train. It's really forcing its way out and into. Now, here you have a cooler tone, and then you have this warmer tone up top. And you think, why would they do that? But if you squint at it, what they've really done is they've pushed the center to the back, and they've pushed the top forward. So by doing that, they've created this, can you guys see what I'm talking about? They've created this overhang coming over on this train here, and that's got also its own forced perspective on it. But they've created this here coming over the top of this section. They've really pushed that color, and they've done it all by the mountains in Switzerland are so large. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying. They're just massive peaks. So they're making this peak feel like it's coming over the top of you, which is actually how I've heard about this Glacier Express. It is just straight up and down. It should be cool if we had a chance to do it, but I don't know if we'll be even anywhere near it. So let's see. This is Switzerland also, I believe. Yes, here. All right. Let's talk about this image. Our eye is being pushed back into the image here. All right. So it kind of sits right in here. The sky is definitely subtle and in the background, even though it's kind of this greenish color, which the sky a lot of times is kind of that greenish, bluish color. It'll still be a cooler color than up here. But, you know, they've used this color through here, through here, through here, down in here, and in the very, very touches right there. Now they've done that, actually, and in here. So what they're doing is they are creating a very harmonious feeling. They are giving us depth by light in front, the darker tones in back, but even this here and this whole area right there, there is less contrast than there is here. See how high this is the highest contrast, plus the little red tops, the little red buildings will bring that forward. Here is in the shadows, except for this little area right here, which gives us really a bright focus on that. See how it's that same color repeated? It leads us right up into the mountains, leads us right back. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Here, most intense colors up front. They've used the same colors coming back and actually a little bit up into here. Most intense, less, this is along the same lines as this, as it should be. This is all the same. There's your foreground. Here's your middle ground and your background. So look at the color tones, right? Most intense, middle intense, less intense. Now, they want this to sit in the back, but they also want you to notice it. So that's why this particular intensity is so important. If you squint at it, that is the darkest, coolest color in the painting. Completely is leading your eye. Illustrators have a tendency to really push these boundaries. This one's very, very clear. Darker colors. It wants you to focus in on here. This is the warmest color. Highest contrast is right there. So you just kind of skip over this bottom. You come right into there, which I'm sure is what they want you to focus on. Then you come here. It's a little bit darker, the gray tones. And here the tones are the lightest. right? So why am I talking about all of these different things? Because until you can understand how color works and why it works the way that it does, your images can be very flat. So how do you create depth? Even when we're doing mixed media, we want to create depth. We want to create interest. We want to create whatever. I mean, sometimes you can have an absolutely flat space, and that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you ever want to start moving away from just using magazine images or something like that, to have a strong color sense and to start seeing the world in colors instead of as a tree. It's like, well, that's that green, that's that blue. I break down colors in things. I see the overall, of course, but you know, there's so much more to see. In being an artist, you teach yourself how to see, of course. So here, this is a great example of perspective. Without it being a train or a building or anything like that. You have larger sized flowers up front, smaller and smaller and smaller. So you're creating an automatic perspective that's leading you right back up and into the picture. It's beautiful. This rock also is leading you into the picture. If this rock was sitting a different way, it would feel less harmonious. Okay? So here, our eyes kind of stop right there. Again, squint at it, see what happens. Then you have this darker contrast through here, creating your middle ground. This has more blues in it in the foreground, so there's a higher intensity of color. And these are grayer tones. Now, there is a lot of contrast in that mountain. The reason why there is a lot of contrast is because that's what your focus is. You have the flowers that are the yellow color. Yellow is the warmest color. Yellow will come to the forefront no matter what. So if something isn't sitting correctly, it is because of a color tone. You know, all you have to do is take your blue watercolor brush, and if you've got a spot that's just kind of jarring, just try to change the tone of it, right? Here, okay, we talked about one like this already. This blue, this purple, this gray, and how those work in contrast to the warmer colors. Right? This is a warmer color than this. They want this to be in the shadow. Now here's a prime example of what I was talking about. This shadow has a highlight here. This shadow has a middle tone here, and this shadow has a dark tone here. If you look closely at this highlight, there is the whitest white. There's a little bit of a bluer white in here that's creating some contrast. It's kind of a purpley white. Very subtle contrast, but it's absolutely there. So they have a highlight and a low light in their snow. And then the ground here actually has, so that's your middle tone, that has looks like we just have two tones in here, which is your highlight and low light, basically. And then here's your middle tone for that. So the shadows have high, light, and medium, high, low, and medium lights, as do the highlights, creating interest. Again, we're forcing the perspective. This one doesn't work quite as well, but look at that. So why is this competing? Because this green right here and this yellow. All right, so they wanted you to see this yellow. That must be the Roman columns there or something. But if that was just like that, it wouldn't feel jarring, right? Now here, this tone right here is very yellow. This would have been more successful if they would have used less red and more of these tones here. They chose, now they wanted you to see this, obviously was what they were focusing on. They really wanted you to see this mountain. So that's why it has the highest contrast. It has the highest contrast in colors. They've used opposite colors here on the color wheel. So remember, you have red, yellow, blue. And then yellow and blue make green. Red and blue make purple. And red and orange make yellow. So when you have opposites on the color wheel, you're creating the highest contrast that you possibly can. So when you're creating high contrast, that means that you want that to be seen. And if you squint at this, this is obviously your foreground, but it's very much so leading you right up into this. It's an interesting piece. This one. Oh my God, I can't believe how far I'm sitting down on my desk. I'm going to have to show you guys this. Here they're using texture. You see that texture that they've created? So squint at that. Squint at that, it goes kind of to the same color tone. You have a warmer and a cooler light, which is creating this crevasse. This is obviously still all in the shadows here. All right, there's your middle ground. The foregrounds on these, they keep pretty simple because they don't want you to focus on the foreground. Here, they wanted you to focus on the foreground somewhat. That leads you back. Here, this foreground is all dark. This one isn't really a good example of that at all because all the colors are essentially the same. So if you squint at it, what comes up the most is probably this guy right here. And, but this color is here too, and here. But here. So my guess is that this is definitely more of an impressionistic painting of it. This is more of an illustrated. So cool colors create the shadows. Warmer colors are the forefront. So there's a warmer yellow back in there. But that yellow is still, it's where the sun is at. So, you know, which is warmer. This is a more intense color. So it's warmer and more intense, which is bringing it in front of. Squint at it. See what happens when you squint at it, right? This is in the back, but it's still a higher contrast. It's a darker color than any of these crevices here. This middle tone will sit properly, even though by scale, it's a much smaller thing. So you would think by scale that this would not fit right. But it does because our eye automatically reads that. And then here being the darkest part of that still sits in front of this. Then we have a warmer tone, which causes it to sit in front of that. This also has higher contrast right here than it does right here. You see how this is a little bit, this is a more red. This is more purple red. This is essentially the same as this. So what this does is this is creating a balance. Squint at it. Again, see where everything is at. It's creating a very nice circular motion. You're just being led right into that painting. Good artists will do that. Now, I'm just going to go through a couple more here. And hopefully you guys are finding value in this. I want you to kind of break this down instead of just reading it as a mountain. I want you to see that this is the darkest dark on the mountain. This is the lightest light. Here we've got dark. Here we've got a middle tone. So this is just a triangle, guys. This is just a jaggedy shape. You could easily make this mountain with just paper, right? Wouldn't that be cool to do a journal page like that that's just paper and you're creating your own mountain? This is a shape. Here, shape here, shape here, here. You know, it's just a series of shapes. Now same here, look at this guy. This is one big white triangle, one middle tone, one darker tone that feeds into this lighter. And it's like all of a sudden there's this white there. Well, that's the mountain reflected off of the lake. Our eye automatically knows what that two little white dots is. The color's amazing. Here is your most intense blue up front. Here. So it wants you to see these little things. It also wants the Eiffel Tower to be the center, but this is leading you back, forced perspective, leading you back into the image. This is your highlighted area. right? This is what they want you to see. They're leading your eye through this as an illustration. If you look here, you see how this gray tone sits in the back. Those are the least intense colors, even though you would think that those are the same, or those are less intense. There is a higher contrast right here, which pulls that in front of this. Now, why does this sit back correctly behind this? Because our eye automatically, when you put the color in front of it, that comes forward, right? We automatically read it as, as shadow. And here, these buildings are smaller. The perspective is pushing us further back. The size of the ships are pulling us further back in. Here, color contrast, highest contrast of color, right in here. Here. Going to be the forward. The middle ground is, of course, this building, which has a forced perspective by the windows, by the whole thing, all right? This is the highest contrast of blues. This is a lesser contrast of blues. And then when you go into the sky, it's just kind of gray and soft and fuzzy. See how well this sits behind this? It's because even though it's a warmer tone, this has a higher contrast, right? So when you're doing your mixed media, you can push things that have higher contrast. You can pull them forward. You can push things backwards. And it's so important to understand how color works. Every artist should know this. Here, perfect example. Most intense color right there. This is the darkest, almost the darkest. All of these things, look at how this little branch is leading this way. Pushes your eye right up there. Even though this one goes here, you've got these birds that are coming up into the tower. It's beautiful. And I can do these with, I can do this with real life photographs also, It's all dissecting the color. Look at how this mountain is created just by shapes. It's white and purple and blue. 3 colors. That means we all can make that. It's just looking at it. And how do you see it? Highest contrast, middle contrast, bluest colors. Even though this is a high contrast here, it is still not as high of a contrast as these colors through here, right? And the reflection reads as a reflection because it's a lighter color. It comes forward because it's a little bit of a bluer tone. This is a little bit grayer tone. This is actually more of a taupe there. Pulling that's a little bit yellower even than, let's see here, this line coming across. This has to be the warmer tone that our eye reads it that way. And again, the perspective leading us back, it's an arrow leading us straight back into that image. Okay, so I get to go to Monet's Gardens. That's what all of these images are from, or paintings are taken from. The water lilies, oh my gosh. Now these actually have a lot of depth to them in real life. I've been fortunate enough to see them. Highest contrast, look at that purple is in there. His highest contrasts are in the front. This Kelly green is the most intense green. Don't get messed up with this. Then we go back to midtones. We just have this kind of white one floating out here, which actually comes forward a little bit. And that was intentional. And then these lighter, softer. We know that was intentional because it's Monet. He knew color. He knew perspective. He knew what he was doing. So then we look at this one. So also, when you're looking at, say this, there's not a whole lot. Those flowers back there are just as white, but this has a higher contrast. This has a lesser contrast, actually, and it is a grayer tone. Even though it's supposed to be white and our eyes read it as white, It's definitely a gray white or a blue white. It is not a bright white like this. This is a real image, or a real photograph of the place. Now, there's a lot of texture in here. So, you know, he's doing close-up images. I did throw some Picasso in there because I'm going to France. There's a Degas. Not sure who this is. I think this is a more contemporary. I love this bull. Picasso's bull were pretty amazing. This is Picasso when he was younger. I love his rooster. You know, they're part of the experience. I plan to go to the Picasso Museum. I get to go to Moulin Rouge. It's not that far from where I'm staying at. I wanted to show you this image because look at what you can do. Look at what you can do. You can completely play with shapes. So even though this is probably one of the coolest cats ever drawn, I mean, I love this guy. But look at what somebody did. Here's a circle, 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 circle. Half circles. Swirly line, circle, circle, circle. So what I'm trying to have you see here is that, you know, if you study and practice, you will have the capability to draw something like that. Now this is close to, again, where I'm going to be staying at in Paris. And then here's the interpretation of the street. I don't know who this artist is. And I just added these in on your travel photos because I thought they were cool. This is, I believe, is a Van Gogh. Looks like it with his lines. Van Gogh is a whole nother art conversation, a whole nother color conversation. Oh my gosh, he was so incredible, so amazing. Some Toulouse-Lautrec images for your ATCs. And then, of course, my favorite, Alphonse. Oh, I didn't realize that this had a watermark on it. It does. So just work around it, ignore it, don't use it. The ATC exchange is a gift. I'm not going to worry about copyright if it's something that I'm giving away. And then Alphonse Mucha. I just love his images. I love his I love the Art Deco era for one. But look here again with the color. Highest contrast right in there. He wants you to have that image be circular there. This is a softer tone of that. So is this blue. This is probably the most intense blue is right there. The less intense blues are on the outside because he's wanting you to come into the illustration. Again, this is a lesser blue. This is a higher intense blue, right? And this green, he wants you to see her. This green, having the opposite color of the red, he is using that on purpose to really bring this warmest tone. That's the warmest tone. Actually, it's green. On her, this red is the most intense color. On her, the way that the hair is moving really brings our eyes through here. Actually, it's closer to this. This is the circular motion within this. Keeps your eyes resting on it. If you squint at it, you see her. Beautiful. This, if you squint at it, the one thing that you see the most is this shape right here. That's really interesting. He wanted this to be seen the most. And her, she's just awesome. If you look at his illustrations, he doesn't use a ton of colors in his paintings. And someday it would be fun to try to paint in his style. So I'm going to bring you up here so you guys can look and see how far I've shrunk down. I feel like a little kid. My chair is completely broken. I usually sit up here like this. Oh my God. I need to buy a chair. Oh well. Oh well. All right. Well, I know I've been talking for quite a while here, and hopefully you found some value as I talked about color and how it is used in illustration to create depth, to create interest, to create focal, to create all of those really important things that we should be aware of, even as a mixed media artist. Okay? So how do you get something to come forward or something to sit backward? How do you force that perspective? By intensity of color and texture and perspective, tone, hue, size, shape, you know. So there's a lot of ways that you can really, really apply a landscape technique to a mixed media technique. What? You just woke up. What happened? Did you scratch yourself? Poor baby. What you doing on the floor there, Oz? He's actually being really good, so I don't want to wake him up. Okay, guys, let me know if you found any value in this. I'm sorry if I rambled on for too long. I did want to go through and really show you how color works. Okay? And if you like this, I can do this with more imagery. I can do this with actual photographs. I can show you this. Any artist that's really truly working out there has a good sense of color. Well, I can't say that. Let me just take that one back. Any classical artist really does utilize color. And it's something that we should really start to... I've done it for years and years and years. I look at the world as color, as well as shape. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I love that you're here with me, and we will work on a project soon. Okay, love you. Bye.